Am I audible to all of you?
Yes.
Okay. And my screen is also visible to all of you guys, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So in our last session, we have discussed about cookies, right? And you guys have practiced the cookies concept in your machine. Is it working as expected?
Yes, it's working, but I have a few doubts about that.
No, I know what is your query, right? I will explain that. Because Monica is here. I think she has not yet joined because she asked one question in the Telegram group, right? So whenever I'm loading the application for the first time, I'm not getting the data. Is that your question, guys? Guys?
No, because I think you explained that.
No, so someone asked me that, sir, whenever I'm running the application, first time it is not showing the cookie data, but from the second time onwards, it is showing the data as expected. Why is the reason? Why it is behaving like this? That is what I'm going to explain. But I think I have explained that concept already, right? But what is
Yes.
your query?
Yeah, so my question is that uh, whenever there is a login information is stored in the cookies, so
Hmm.
if it is stored in plain text, then anyone can read. But there are
Yes,
websites like
obviously.
Facebook, YouTube, Google,
Exactly. This is the reason why cookie are not secure. So for that purpose, you need to use session, right? We have two state management techniques. One is cookies, another one is session. So once I explain the session concept, right, then I will explain what is the difference between them. And then as per your requirement, either you will choose cookies or you will choose sessions, right? So until and unless I'm not explaining session concept, right, till you will not understand what is the difference between them, how they are going to store the data, which one is which approach we need to use, what are the different real-time scenarios where we can use sessions and cookies, how we can decide whether we need to use a session or we need to use cookies. That is what we are going to discuss in today's session.
okay.
Clear? Yeah.
Yes, and regarding that question that for the first time, I think you explained that for the first
Exactly.
time when there is a connection, the browser will send its data to the web server, and then only the web
Exactly.
server will.
Exactly. If you guys look at this diagram, in the first request, right, does the client or the browser sending any cookie information in the request header? Guys, we participate. Don't be silent in the session.
No.
Yes.
No.
So, no. And when the client will send the cookie information in the request header, whenever he got the cookie information in the response header, right? As long as the client doesn't have any cookie information, then the client is not going to send the cookie information in the request header. So when will client get the client cookie information? Whenever the browser sets the same on the response header only, right? So once the server set the cookie information in the response header, then only the client is going to send the same cookie information in the request header from the next request onwards, right? But once the server set the cookie information, it is not going to set the cookie information in each and every response, right? So wherever you want to set the information, you want to set. So if you look at our example, right, we are setting the cookie information in the index action method. That means whenever you call the index action method, each time you call the index action method, it is going to set the cookie information in the response header. But at the but at the same time, if you go to the index view, here we are accessing the cookies information from the request header. So whenever the request comes for the first time, at that time, does the client send the cookie information in the request header? Yes or no?
No.
No.
Yes.
So if it is not sending the cookie information in the request header, if you are trying to access the cookies information from the request header, is it going to show you any data or it is going to give you empty information?
Empty information.
Empty. So this is the reason why whenever you are running the application for the first time, or if you are accessing any of the method, right, after the delete cache method, you will not get the cookie information. So this is what happening with Monica. She has asked one question, sir, we are not getting the data because the concept is this one. And if you look at this diagram only, you will understand. So for the first request, we are not setting any cookie information in the request header. And we are trying to display the data from the cookies only. Then how it is going to display? Because data is not available now, right? If you run the application, right? Now, if you run the application, then in that case, you will see it is showing the data. Why it is showing the data? Because already previously I have run the application. I have not deleted the cookie information, and we have set the time duration to 7 days. This is the reason why it is showing the data. Now, to prove this, for the first request, it is not sending the cookie information. What I can do is I can go to the delete cookie method and I have deleted the cookie information, right? So once you have deleted the cookie information, then what you need to do? Just go to the home page, right? So I'm calling for the, let's assume now this is the first request to our application, right? Once you are accessing for the first time, you can see the username and the user ID is empty. And if you open this localhost, then you will see that, right? This is the response header. In the response header, we are setting the cookie information, right? Two piece of information we are setting here. One is user ID and one is username, and that is what you can see here. Set cookie, user ID, username, and the expire time when the cookie is going to be expired. But if you look at the request header, it is not sending any cookie information. Does it sending any cookie header here? No. In this request header dictionary, there is no key with the name cookie. That means for the first request, whenever the request comes to the client, sorry, server, at that time, this request object that cookies is empty. And from empty, right, there is no key with the name username, so it is going to show you empty information. This is the reason why whenever you are accessing for the first time, it is not displaying the data. Clear, guys? But now again, now I'm again making a request to the same browser. Same request, what I can say, same action method. Okay, just click on it. Now it is not the first time, it is the second time. Right? So in this case, what I'm going to do, I'm just doing these changes here. Right? I'm just doing these changes, and now I'm running the application. Right? See what information is okay. So I have I thought I have clicked on 2 times, right? So previously it was something like okay. So I have clear 2 times, right? Okay, let me do one thing. Cookie deleted. So this time it is going to set this value. Why it is hitting 2 times? I don't know. Let me clean the browser. Yes. Open the developer tool. Delete the cookies. Go to the home index. Go to the home index action method. First time you will not get the data, and this makes sense because we are not sending any cookie information in the request header. If you but in this case, if you set the response header, whatever the response we got from the server, it is set the cookie information. That means from the next request onward, whether it is to the same action method or to a different action method, doesn't matter. it is going to set this cookie information in the request header. Now I'm accessing the same page again. Just click on the OK button, right? Refresh the page. And in this case, you will see again, it is setting the cookie information in the request header, no doubt about it. But what you will see it is also sending the cookie information, right? So that means now if you visit another page, I'm visiting to the privacy page. Again, you will see in the privacy page, did we set any cookie information? No, we have not set any cookie information. This is the reason why you can see in the response header there is no set cookie header. But in the privacy page, if you go to the right view page, then you can see we are accessing the cookie information. And this is the reason why if you look at the request header, we are sending the cookie information. So this cookie information means this is the user ID and this is the username and this is what you can see here. Now, if you go to the what I can say delete cookie page, home/delete cookie. So in this case also, you will see it is going to send the cookie information. That cookie information is going to be deleted by the action method. But while returning, it is not setting the cookie information. Now, if you open this one, then you will see in the response header, right? You can see that the information is not set. You can see user ID is empty, username is empty. But if you look at the request header, that cookie information is being sent to the server. Now, if you visit a different page, like I'm visiting the private page, now you will see the data is not there. Why data is not there? Because in the previous request, we have deleted the cookie information. And this is the reason why in the request header, you will not see that cookie information, right? And the response header, the server is also not setting the cookie information. Now, if you visit another page, right, about page, then you will see that cookie information is not there. It is still showing that empty and zero. Now, if you visit to the index action method, then this action method is actually setting the cookie information. But as previously, there is no cookie information. So whenever I visit to this index action method, this request header doesn't contain any cookie information. This is the reason why you can see it is showing empty. But if you look at the response header, then in this case, it is setting the cookie information. So from the next request onward, right? If you access the page, then you will get the cookie information. Clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes.
And
So
one more thing,
we,
guys, you need to understand here the cookie information is stored on the server, on the client side in the plain text using key value pair. So how many set cookie are there? Right? For each cookie, the response is going to be set using a separate header. Set cookie. So in our example, we have appended two cookies information. One is user ID and one is username. So in the response header, right, you will see there are two cookies, set cookie and another set cookie. Here ID is this one, username is this one, right? And then, but while sending, it is going to contain one cookie object, which is going to contain all the cookies information. This is user ID, this is name, right? Every cookie information is going to be separated by semicolon, and then it will pass the data in the form of a key value pair. And here, the most important thing that you need to remember is the data is going to be stored on the client machine, that is on the browser. Second thing, right? Second thing, it is in plain text. Third thing, it is going to be stored for a longer period of time. Even if you close the browser, if you open a different web browser, right? So I'm opening a different window, right? I'm not talking about incognito window. I'm opening a different window. Then also you will get the cookie information. You can see I'm also getting the cookie information. So these are the points that you need to understand. Clear?
I have one question.
Yes.
So does the browser automatically sends the cookies to the server, or do we have to explicitly tell the
No.
browser?
This is the browser responsibility, right? If the browser having some cookie related to a particular website, right? Whenever the browser is going to send the next request, if it is having the cookie information for that particular website, then it is going to send the cookie information automatically. This is the browser default behavior. We do not need to do anything related to that browser, because in this case, the browser is only responsible for sending the cookie. And we are responsible for setting the cookie in the request header, in the response header. But sending the cookie it is the responsibility of the browser. And from the request header, it is our responsibility to paste the cookie information like this. Here you can see we
Hello,
are
sir.
using request.cookies to get the cookies information from the request header. And here you need to use HTTP context accessor instance to get the request header cookies data.
Hello, sir. I have one question. Suppose if we have two applications are setting a cookies. So how the application identify the cookies
So,
for
so
the particular?
it is related. It is related to the cookies information. What I'm sending here, browser is that what I can say intelligent. That browser knows this request is coming from the this URL, right? If you go to this one, right here you can see what is the request URL. So this information they know. So in this case, it is showing local host and some port number. But in real time,
Okay.
the domain name is going to be unique. If you are having two
Yes.
different applications, then two different domain name you will get. And from the domain name only, he knows that this cookie information is belongs to this domain name. So whenever a new request sent to this particular domain name, then I need to send this cookie information.
Okay. So it means that it is automatically identified based on the
Yes,
domain
yes,
name.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you, sir.
Because domain name is going to be unique.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
So
Right?
does it
Because
send
this is
all the cookies?
sorry.
Does it send all the cookies stored,
Yes,
or
yes.
we can select
It is
particular
going to
cookie?
send whatever cookie it is having, all the cookies are going to be sent in each request. And one more thing, guys, you cannot set more than 4 MB data in cookie. The limit, a very small size of information you can store on the client browser, right? Maximum 4 MB. Beyond 4 MB data, you cannot store in the client browser. This is another limitation. If I'm comparing with cookie with session, limitation is 4 MB. So maximum 4 MB data you can set in 4 MB or 4 MB or 4 KB. I don't know. I will check once more. I will explain this thing. Maximum 4 MB. Understand? All the cookie
Yes, sir.
information it will set. So in this case, you can see I'm having two cookies. Set cookie, right? One cookie ID is user ID, another one is username. And whenever it is sending, you can see both the cookie information it is sending. If you are having 5 cookie, right, 10 cookie, all the cookies information it will send in each and every request. Right? Because this is not in our hand. This is browser. Browser is provided by someone else. That default functionality we can change. Yes, what we can say is we can disable cookie in our application. We can disable cookies JavaScript in our machine. We can delete cookie from the history by going to the browser history. Those things we can do, but we can change this default behavior that we don't want. We only want to send the user ID, but we don't want to send the username because this is the importance, right? If you remember, and next, I'm going to show you one thing, right? Is essential, right? Because why is the browser taking the responsibility to send all the cookies? Because it is essential. If you want to run your application smoothly, then it is responsibility. It should have all the cookie information. If you only have user ID and you do not have username, then how you can identify, right? All these things. So currently, I'm storing here user ID, username. So something right based on the user ID, you can log in the user, right? You can do different right. Suppose someone add some items into the cart, and if you are storing all the cart items in the browser, right? Suppose the user add 10 items, right? And you are fetching only, is it possible that out of 10 item browser will send the 5 out of item details and he will skip 5 items? Then in that case what will happen? You know that I have added 10 items to the cart, but while you are browsing, you can see only 5 items. Does that make any sense? No, it will not make any sense. So this is the result. This is the reason why cookie is going to send all the information, whatever you send to the cookie.
Sir, how can we
Yeah,
know the size?
sorry. So
How can
basically, if you take this user ID password, right, and create one text file, store there, check what is the size, because it is going to store the data in the form of a text file only. Cookie is going to store the data in the text file. So just create a text file on your machine, store this data, and check what is the size.
Got it.
Yeah, the maximum size it can include 4 KB.
Yeah, 4 KB or 4 MB, I don't remember. It might be 4 KB. Right? Clear, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, even I have make a point. 4 KB. And the maximum size for cookie is 4 KB. You can store beyond 4 KB data. So this is how, what I can say, cookie is working. So what is the problem with the cookies, guys? First problem, you can set a maximum of a 4 KB data. Second point, the data is going to be stored on the client side. Third problem, the data is in plain text. As the data is in plain text, as the data is going to be stored in the client machine, it is not secure. Yes or no?
Yes.
So to overcome this problem, right? To overcome this problem, another what I can say state management techniques provided by right the ASP dot and Core MVC is sessions, right? So the sessions means they are also used for storing and managing user specific data. So basically, whenever you are having some application specific data, right, which is not specific to a user, in that case you can go with what I can say cookies, or you can go with the sessions. But in this case, but in the case of sessions, it should be user specific. So it is also like the cookies, the session is also going to store and manage the data, right? But in this case, the data is going to be stored on the server side. The data is going to be stored on the server side, and whatever information the server sent to the client, whatever information the server sent to the client, it is not in the form of what I can say a plain text. It is in encrypted format. Second thing is that the size is much bigger than the size of cookies, right? In cookies, we can have a limitation of 4 KB. In session, it is extended up to 128 KB, right? And in this case, and the behavior is going to be same, right? The way the cookies are working, in the same way, the session is going to be work. But the problem what we are having with cookie, that is the less size data. The data is stored on the client machine. The data is stored on the plain text format. These things will not happen with session. In this case, the data is not going to be in plain text. The data is not going to be stored on the server side. There is no that 4 KB limitation whenever you are working with session. In this case, you can extend it the size up to 128 MB. Sorry, 128 KB. Clear? What are the basic difference between these two?
So where the cookies are saved, that is also saved in the client machine, right?
Cookies are stored in the client machine.
Okay. Sessions also available in the client machine, is it?
No, session data is stored on the server side, something called session ID, right, which is in a encrypted format. But session ID will be sent to the server, to the client. How it is going to work, that is what I'm going to explain, right? But
Okay.
before that, you just need to understand that what is the basic difference between, if someone asks you what is the difference between session and cookies, then you need to explain. Both are used for managing the user specific data, right? Right. So what is the main difference? The difference is that in the case of a cookies, the data is going to be stored on the client machine. On the other hand, in the case of a session, the data is going to be stored on the server. Second difference, in the case of cookies, there is a size limitation. That means we can store maximum up to 4 KB. On the other hand, with sessions, this limitation is extended up to 128 KB. Third thing, in the case of cookies, the data is going to be stored in the form of a plain text on the client machine. That means there is a security issue. Hacker can hack your data very easily, right? On the other hand, in the case of sessions, the data is not going to be stored. First of all, the data is not going to be stored on the client side. Second thing, whatever the data, right, whatever the session ID the server is going to send to the client, that is not in plain text, that is in encrypted format. Clear?
Yes, clear.
Yes. Now to understand this concept, what we need to understand is the working principle. See, whenever the first request come to the server, right, the server will set the cookie information in the in the response header. But in this case, this set cookie, unlike this, if you go to this, in this case, this set cookie, right? This set cookie is actually containing the actual data in plain text format. And for each cookie, we are having a different set cookie header in the response, right? But with this case, right, you will not find this multiple set cookie in the response header. You will not find this multiple set cookie in the response header in the case of a session. In this case, you will find how many number of sessions you created for your application, no matter. Only one set cookie is there, and that set cookie is going to contain something called session ID in the response header. So if you compare this diagram with with our what I can say cookies, right? Then you need to understand in the case of cookies, the actual data is set in the response header using the set cookie, and the data is in plain text. But in the case of sessions, the actual data is not set in the response header. Something called session ID is going to be set in the response header. And how many sessions, right? How many data you stored, how many keys you created, no matter. Only one session ID it is going to set in the response header. And this session ID is unique per browser. Sir, what do you mean by unique per browser? If you are having Mozilla Firefox, it will generate a unique session ID. If you are having what I can say, Google Chrome, it is having another session ID. If you are opening the Google Chrome incognito mode, another session ID. So whatever the browser, right, you are going to use for each browser, it is going to create a unique session ID, and that unique session ID it is going to set in the response header. So the client in this case, and this session ID is in encrypted format. So the client is not receiving the data. The client is receiving something called session ID. And then the client from the next request onward, it is going to pass that session ID in the request header. Right? The client is going to pass that session ID in the request header using this cookie. Right? That cookie key, it is using that cookie key, it is going to pass the session ID in the request header. So once the server receives the session ID, then he can process the data and uh, right, he will check the session ID and process the request. But the thing is that how it is internally working. See, see, whenever the server receives the request, right? Initially, he doesn't have any information related to the cookie because when the request comes for the first time, set cookie is empty. There is no header called set cookie. So in that case, what the server will do is it will create one session ID. And this session ID becomes the key. And along with this session ID, what it will do, whatever the data you want to store, it will create a key value pair. Whatever the key, whatever the value, right, you are storing in the session, it will store the data in the form of a key value pair into the server cache, into the server cache. There is something called temporary server cache. Inside that temporary server cache, which is nothing but it's a dictionary. Inside that server cache, it is going to store, right? It is going to store the data in the form of a key value pair. So in the server cache, the data is going to be stored in the form of a key value pair, and whatever data it stored on the server, for all those data, it will generate a session ID. And that session ID, it will send to the client. So when the client makes the next request, he will send the session ID. The server receives the session ID. From the session ID, it will fetch the data, right? From where it will fetch the data from the server cache, and then it will get the what I can say user ID, or user key, whatever key you store in the dictionary. By using the key, you can get the data. So this is how it is working. So basically, in the server store the cookie, don't say the cookie information. Server store the user information on the server caching, right, on the server cache. So what is cache? Cache is nothing but it is something, you can say it's a temporary storage, right? If you want to store some data not in the database but on the server side for the next request or not, you can make use of caching. Caching is basically used to improve your application performance. So in that case, so internally the server having some cache memory. Inside that cache memory, it is going to store the information, right? So let's see how it is internally working. So for that purpose, what we need to do, we need to use this Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.Session namespace. And this namespace is automatically included into your application, right? Automatically included into your ASP.NET Core application. So no matter whether you are developing the MVC application, Razor Pages application, Web API application, right? So not in the Web API, but you can say it is for Razor Pages application, for MVC application, this namespace is automatically included. What this namespace is to, like, it is provide some middleware component for managing the session state, right? So first of all, you should need to import this namespace. Once it imports the namespace, then you can use the middleware component, right, which is provided by this namespace. And using that middleware component, you can configure sessions for your application. Right, to enable session middleware component, what is the steps, right? To enable this, first of all, you need to say, right, first of all, you need to tell the web server which kind of memory cache you want to use. So as we already discussed, the data is going to be stored in the cache. In the server side cache, the data is going to be stored. For what kind of a caching mechanism you want to use? I want to use distributed cache. What is distributed caching? How it is internally working? We will have separate session for that purpose. But for now, you just remember this distributed cache means it is the memory cache for your server side application, right? In the server side, by using this distributed cache, it is going to store the data, right, in the form of a key value pair. Then another thing what we need to do, you need to use this add session service, right? So if you remember, before consuming any middleware component, we need to register the middleware component. Similarly, if you want to consume the session middleware component, first of all, you need to add the session service to the request processing pipeline, or you can say to the dependency built-in dependency injection container, right? So why we should use this add session? Because using this add session, we need to configure the timeout, whether the session is essential or not, whether you want to access the session using HTTP only, or you want to access this by using your JavaScript, right? All these things you need to set here, right? So what is the session timeout? Now, session timeout means if your application, suppose I set the session timeouts to 30 seconds or 5 minutes, you log into your website, and after that time and you become ideal for that time period, then what will happen? It will delete the session, it will clear the session, and again you need to log in. So most of the banking site, if you visit most of the financial or banking or very secured sites, right, and you just log in into your net banking account, and then you become ideal for 5 minutes, and then you try to visit to a different page. At that time it will immediately what I can say, send you to the login page. Why? Because within that time period, the session is timeout. So you can the session is timeout means you have to log in and you have to do the same process again. Means you have to log in, then you need to visit the page wherever you want to visit. So we will see how we can how it is internally working. And you might be a question, sir. Suppose I have set the timeout to 30 seconds, then I'm not ideal in my application for the 30 seconds, right? Forget about 30 seconds. Let assume that you set the timeout for 5 minutes. And you are saying that I'm not ideal in my website for 5 minutes. I'm visiting different pages. Then what will happen after 5 minutes? Guys, remember, whenever you are using the session concept, right? Each time you make a request to the server, each time it is going to reset the timeout, right? Whatever, suppose you make one request in 7 2, 7:02, then it will set the session timeout expert time to 7:07. If you again make a request at 7:04, then it will reset the timeout to 7:09. That means each time you make a request to the server, it will reset the timeout, right? Whatever the timeout you specified. So using this add session service, you need to set, right, what is the time out, whether the session is essential. Essential means what? Now one property is there, you can say this essential, and what is the use. Now if you know want that the service, this session is essential in order to function the application properly, then in that case it might be bypass some of the consent, right, which is set by the uh, uh, government, right? So if you visit different country, right, they are having some different rules, different regulation, GDPR, right, consent, right? So those are going to be used, right? You cannot right, until and unless you are accepting the cookies in your, suppose you are visiting different website, then they are saying accept the cookies, right? Why they are asking? Because they want to take your consent, right? They are taking your consent that you are accepting the cookies, you are accepting our terms and condition, we can track you, and as per your behavior we are going to show the details, right? For that purpose the cookie or sessions are internally implemented, right? So you have to use this add session. Then right, you need to use this use session middleware component. Until and unless you are not using the use session middleware component, session is not going to be work. But the important thing is that where you need to register this use session middleware component. You need to use this middleware component after the routing component and before the MVC middleware component, right? For better understanding, look at this diagram. First of all, I have called this a add distributed memory cache because I want to store the data in the server cache. To store the data into the server cache, so you need one caching mechanism, and for that purpose I'm injecting one inbuilt service, that is add distributed memory cache, which is going to store the data in the cache. Second thing, you need to use the add session because as I want to import this session middleware component. So before you using the session middleware component, I need to register the add session. I need to register the session service. And here you can say, what is the timeout? Timeout means I'm specifying 10 seconds. That means after, if you become ideal for 10 seconds, so giving a less time because I want to show you the what will happen after 10 seconds, within 10 seconds. That functionality I want to show you practically. This is the reason why I'm giving a very less time, right, for the testing purpose. But you should not give 10 seconds. You should give at least, right, 5 minutes or 3 minutes. It's for your business requirement, right? The business requirement means the client will give you the information. You are developing my application. And if the user is ideal for 5 minutes, then please and after 5 minutes, if he try to visit a different place, please make him log in again. Then in that case you can make use of a 5 minutes, right? So you need to convert so that 5 minutes into seconds, and you can say, right, use that. Even though you can, instead of from seconds, you can use from minutes, from hour, right? Every information is there available in the time span class. HTTP only means you only need to access the cookies, right, using the HTTP protocol. If someone sending one request from the JavaScript, then in that case we do not want to accept the cookie information, right? And for that purpose, I'm setting this HTTP only true. Is essential means, do you think that without these sessions, your application is not going to be behave properly? Yes. Without session, my application is not going to be work properly. Then in that case, you need to set this is essential true. That means if some of the companies, right, uh, country, they do not want this cookie information to be stored, right, then it will bypass those things. And even some of the browser machine, right, you can also disable cookie. So in that case it is also not going, it is not going to work, right? If you disable, then that will be ignored. It is going to store the cookie information and it is going to work as expected, right? For that purpose you have to make this is essential property to true. Then you need to use this use session before use before use routing, sorry, after use routing and before this map controller route. So what is the routing and all these things we are going to discuss once this session is completed, right? Then the next topic is routing. So I'm not going to discuss much more about routing. So why it is important to place this before the map controller route? Because within the controller only we need to access the session information. This is the reason why before executing any action method, right, within the action method, we want to fetch the session information. This is the reason why you need to put this use session middleware component before the map controller route control component and after the use routing, because if you are setting before the use routing, it doesn't make any sense, because this routing will decide which action method is going to be executed, and before executing the action method we need to get the session information. And this is the reason why before after use routing and before map controller route, you need to register this use session cookies, right? So, and even, right, and the one more point, guys, you need to remember that by default, right, the cookie name is going to be this one. The session ID, it is going to generate one session ID which is going to be set in the cookie, right, in the response header. That session name is by default ASP.NET Core session, but you can give it any name, right? For example, I'm giving my sample MVC web session. You can give any name. Don't think that this dot should be there, this dot should be there. It is not. It is just a string name. Any name you want, you can give, and that will be set in the response header, right? So let us see. Let us modify the main method, right, of our program class to do all these things, right? Let me open and let me do. So first of all, we need to add this add controller with views, because we want to develop one MVC application, right? For ASP.NET MVC application, it is recommended to use this add controller with views middleware service. Sorry, this add controller with views service. And then what we need to do, we need to store the data into the memory, right? For that purpose, I'm using distributed memory cache. Then we need to use session in our application. For that purpose, I'm using this add session service. And using this add session service, I'm setting, suppose you don't want to set from seconds, so you can use from minutes, right? You can say from days, for hour, for millisecond, for minutes. So all the information is there. Whatever you want to use, that you can use. So currently I'm going with this 10 seconds. I'm giving my name like this. Don't think that this is mandatory. So you can remove this dot. That is also fine. And HTTP only we have discussed is essential. We have discussed, right? And then what I'm using all these things, right? HTTP static files, right? Redirection. Forget about all these things. Focus. This is use routing. Currently, we are not using any kind of authorization, so you can simply all ignore this one. So this is your use routing middleware component, and this is your MVC middleware component. So before, after the routing and before the MVC middleware component, you need to call this a use session, because you want to access the session information before executing the action method. That is the reason why before the MVC controller route middleware component, we have to put this. If you put this after this one, then it is not going to work. Or even if you put before this one, it is not also going to work. So it should be before uh, your MVC middleware component and after the routing component, right? So this is how you need to configure the session, right? Clear, guys? Clear? What is the things required to configure use session in your application? First of all, you need to add the caching mechanism, what mechanism you want to use. Then you need to add the add session service, because until and unless you are not using this add session, you cannot use the session middleware component. Once you use the add session, within the add session, you need to specify the required things, right? Required things means what is the name. Even though if you do not specify, the default naming convention is there, right? Even I'm commenting this one for now, right? You can set the time. You want to access it using HTTP protocol only, yes. Do you think that the session is mandatory for the application to behave or for the application to function properly? Yes, you need to set this value to true. And then you need to use the session middleware component before the MVC middleware component and after the routing component. And this is mandatory and important. If you do not use this middleware component properly, then your session is not going to work. Clear, guys? How you can configure your session in your ASP.NET Core MVC application? Clear or not? Guys,
Yes, sir, clear.
okay, right. So once the session is configured, right, then what is our next work? Our next work is how we can set the session data and how we can get the session data. And for that purpose, ASP.NET Core provide iSession implementation, right? And in this iSession implementation, you can have this get and set method. You can use get method, get integer. To get integer data, you can use get integer. To get string data, you can use get string, right? And even though you can use set integer to set integer data and set string to set string data, right? So let us see how we can use this in our MVC application. So for that purpose, I'm going to modify the home controller class, right? So you can see I'm creating two constant variable to hold the key name. And then you can see I'm storing some string data using the set string method. And I'm storing some integer data using the set int method. If you go to the definition, then you will see, right? There are get set int, get int, set string, get string, and get, right. So these are the different methods. So from there you can using this method you can set and get the data, right. So in this case I'm using these two methods. One method to set the string data, another method to get the integers to sorry to set the integer data. And then, and I think any data you want in your application using this set string method is also fine, because anything you want to store, you can store them in the form of a string only, right? Integer data, you can store them as string, right? Anything you can store, right? But I'm showing how you can store some integer as well as some string data. So for that purpose, what I'm using HTTP context dot session. Right? Using this HTTP context dot session, you can set the data. And in this case, what internally it is going to do now from whichever browser you are calling this action method, we are making a request to this action method. For that particular browser, it will generate a unique session ID, and while generating the unique session ID, it will take, right, the name, right? So for now, let me uncomment this one. By taking this unique name ID, by taking this unique ID, it is going to, right, by taking this name of the session, it is going to generate a unique session ID. And using that unique session ID, it is going to store this data in the cache, right? In the cache, this will become the key and this will become the value. And once it store the data into the cache, it will generate a unique value, and that unique value it is going to set, right? It is going to set for this my simple web dot session. So this will become the key, and whatever the unique session ID it generates based on the browser, right? That will become the value of this key, and that key value will be returned to the client, right? And in the while returning to the client, you will not see this user ID as the key, right? And what this 1 2 3 4 5 say whatever it is the value, username is the key, this pranaya at the rate. So you will not see this information. So this information will be stored where? It will be stored in the server cache. Or this information, it is going to generate a unique session ID. That session ID will become the value, and what will become the key? Will become the key, and this key value will return to the client. And that session ID, what this server is generating, it is unique for each browser, right? Unique for each browser means from your machine, if you are accessing, then it will generate a unique value. From my machine, I'm accessing the application. It will generate a unique session ID, right? And that session ID it is going to use throughout the user session, right? Throughout means once you start accessing, right, it will create the same session ID. Once your session end, then don't think that again a new session ID is going to be generated. The same session ID it is going to reuse. How it is going to reuse, that what we are going to see practically, right? So this is how you can set the session, and this is how you can get the session. For setting the session, you need to use the set int method, and for getting the session, you need to use get int method, and you need to access this using the HTTP context dot session. Previously, HTTP context dot request dot cookies, but in this case, HTTP context dot session, right? And then what we need to do, we need to change something into the views, right? Views means let me modify the index view and index view. Guys, remember, like the way we have used this HTTP context of accessor object to access the cookies data inside a view, in the same way, we can use the same HTTP context accessor object to access the session data from a view. How? You need to use this context accessor object, and then you need to use this HTTP context, right? And from this, you can get the session object. From the session object, you can use this get string method and get int method by specifying the key name. And in this case, it is going to return the data, right? So this is how you can access the data from a view. But internally, all the things are going to be executed. And in this case, you are able to access the session data by using getString method. Why? The reason is this one. The reason is before executing the controller action method, all the logics are executed. All the logics are executed means it is validating the session, whether the session is expired or not. If it is not expired, then what is the session ID? And based on the session ID, it is fetching the data from the cache. And after fetching the data from the cache, it stores the data in the form of a key value pair in the session object. And this is the reason why you are able to access the session object, and by using this getString method, getInt method, by specifying the key, you can access the value. But before that, if the session is expired, then you will not get the data. Yes, any question from anyone?
Yes, sir. Do we have only
Sorry?
hello? Am I
Yeah,
audible?
yeah,
Hello?
yeah.
Hello?
Yes, yes,
Uh,
please ask your question.
do we have only one session per yes. Yes. Do we
Yes,
have
yes,
only one
only
session
one.
per application, or can we have
No,
a
no, no. That,
yeah,
that, that,
okay.
that is what I'm saying. Session ID is unique for browser. Right? From your browser, it is going to generate a unique session ID. From my browser, it is going to generate a unique session ID. If you are accessing from Google Chrome, it will be different than if you are accessing the same application using Mozilla, then the session ID is going to be different. Even though if I am trying to access the application, right, using incognito mode, then the session ID is going to be different.
Hmm.
Right? How it is
Okay.
different,
So
that is what I'm going to show you practically. But it is
okay,
going
in
to
this
be
case,
different.
so
Yes.
in this case, session data also will be different, right? For if the
Yes, yes,
session ID is
obviously session data is going to be different. Don't think that this is a ID value and whatever I'm storing, it is going to be same for everyone. This is user specific data, right? User specific
okay.
data means whatever your user ID, username, that will be stored in your session. My user ID, my name, it is going to store in my session. Clear?
My
Your
doubt
voice
was
is not,
like,
yes,
suppose
the voice is not clearly
if
audible.
I,
Your
yeah,
voice
my
is
doubt
breaking, man.
was suppose if I log
See,
in two different browsers.
guys, his voice is
So
audible
in this
clearly to all of you guys.
No.
case,
No.
His voice is breaking, right? Okay. So after the session, we will discuss, right? Because your voice is not audible to me at this
two
moment.
Yeah, I have one question.
session
Yes.
So whenever the session expires and the server has sent a new session, so will that be different from the previous one?
No. That will be same. It is specific to browser. For your browser, the session is generated means it is going to reuse the same session ID. Okay, let me first explain, let me first show you this thing practically. And then if you guys are having some question, then you can ask me, right? So for now, these are the implementation, right? Let me first run the application, show you the things practically. So currently we have used configure the session in our program main method, right? And then I'm using the session within the action method. I'm setting the session data from the action method. I'm fetching the session data as well as from within a view. I'm also fetching the session data, right? Now, but guys, remember this logic here. I'm writing the logic, but you should not write this logic inside a view, right? It is so the responsibility of view is not to get the data from the session. It should be the responsibility of a action method to send the data from action method to a view. So in your action method, you should fetch the data from the session and then you should pass the data to the view. But in this case, I'm showing like this directly. I'm just trying to make you understand. Yes, this approach is available. You can still access the data within a view, right? So now what I'm trying to do is I'm going to run the application. Let me first explain how it is working. Then I will explain, I will take your queries, right? See. So what he is saying, the unhandled exception, invalid no service for type Microsoft.asp.ie HTTP context accessor is being registered. That means if you look at the view, right, then we are using this IHTTP context accessor service, but that we have not registered into our application, right? This is the reason why we are getting this error. So what we need to do, we need to register that service as well, right? So what I'm doing, I'm registering that service, right? Builder that service registration process is not important. You can do anything, but this middleware component is important. So I'm registering that IHTTP context and type for IHTTP context accessor is HTTP context accessor. And in this case, I'm using add singleton because I don't want this instance to be created multiple times. Only one instance that should be shared across multiple requests. Now I'm running the application and I'm getting the data. Right? Why I'm getting the data? Because it is stored previously. Okay, so to do one more thing, what I'm trying to do is, right? So this is my local host, and if you look at the local host, right? Some cookie information is being sent, right? Previously, we have used this user ID, username, right? This is the reason why. So let me do one thing. This user ID, username. You guys remember where we have set this one in our previous example, right? To make you understand what I'm trying to do, I'm opening this inside the incognito mode, right? See, in incognito mode, you can see it is in the okay. It is not showing in the response. Okay, let's wait for 10 seconds. So before that, what we need to do? We need to clear the data, right? Clear the data means because that cookie information we have not yet right. This is the reason why it is behaving differently, right? So what I'm trying to do is I'm just copy pasting this code into my controller class, right? and then I'm running the application, right? And then I'm calling this a delete cookie method, home slash delete cookie. Cookies are deleted, right? So once I delete the cookie, then what I'm trying to do is I'm replacing this code right now, not this one. It should be this one. Okay. So now I have deleted the cookie from my machine. Now what I'm trying to do is I'm running the application, right? So now let me copy the URL, open the new incognito mode, right? F12, make the request, right? If you see in this case, right? If you see in this case, in the response header, the cookie is created. In the response header, the cookie is being created. Now what I'm doing, I'm just copying, right, into the what I can say notepad. Not this one. This is my cookie data. I have stored in a different window, and this is also my browser. I'm also accessing the right, and here also this is the request header. Copy, same. This is my cookie data. See, this is from the incognito mode, right? And this is from Google Chrome. Google Chrome. So the name is going to be same. Whatever the name we specified here, right? If you go to the program class, whatever the name we specified for our session, that is going to be same. But the value, this is one value, and this is another value. The cookie value means this is nothing but your session ID. So this is nothing but session ID, and this session ID is unique for browser. Even though if I open Google Chrome, Mozilla, Mozilla is not installed on my machine. Okay. Suppose let me copy the URL. Right. And this is I'm opening in Microsoft Edge. And in Microsoft Edge, if you go and check the cookie, what is the request header? This one. This is Microsoft Edge. I'm accessing the same application, but using different browser. The session ID, it is going to be unique or it is going to be different one. Guys,
Unique.
unique. Right? The session ID is going to be unique, That means for incognito mode, session ID is 1, and for Google Chrome, it will generate or it will create a different session ID. And for cookie, right, for Edge, it is having a different session ID. That means the session ID is not unique for all the 3 browsers. It is going to generate a unique session ID for each browser, right? And this session ID is different than this one. This one is different than this one. Clear, guys?
Sir, one question.
Yes.
Session ID means what we are using the application, that one, or it will be dynamic?
No. This is nothing but it is a unique ID, right? Which is generated for your browser,
Browser. Okay.
right? And
Because
this
I
unique
got confused.
ID, sorry,
Session ID used in the application, right? So I got confused.
right? So in
In
this
the
case,
application.
this is nothing but your session ID. If you are getting this value, then that means what? It means this is nothing but your session ID. And this session ID means this value. And this value is generated by the server based on your browser, and it is going to be unique. It is going to be unique for each browser. And if you are accessing the same application from your machine, it is going to generate a different session ID. Clear?
When the session time out, will the cookie be cleared in the web browser?
Yeah. See. Now we have already 10 minutes, right? If I visit to the privacy page, right, I'm not getting the data. Right? In the privacy page, am I getting the data? I'm not getting the data. If you go visit this one, even though you are passing the cookie information, right, whatever the data that you need to pass, right, in the request header, even though I'm passing the data in the request header, I'm not getting the data. Why I'm not getting the data? Because 10 seconds we have given. After, if you become ideal for 10 seconds, the session is going to be expired or not. Even if you come here and if you click on the privacy page, right, then also you will get the same issue, right? The session is expired. Now from this page, now click on the home button. Again, you will get the data. Now expand this one, right? And again, expand this one and copy the URL, right? So this is your Google Chrome, right? Now come here, paste it here and check the session ID. Copy this one. Where we use the Google Chrome? Google Chrome is there. Paste it here. Is this the same session ID or it is creating a different one?
It's the same one.
Same. That means session ID are browser specific. For your browser, it is going to generate a unique session ID. But don't think that you are accessing from Google Chrome. I am accessing the Google Chrome, right? Then the same session ID it will generate for you and generate for me. Don't think like that. For you from your machine, if you are using Google Chrome from my machine, if I am using this Google Chrome, then it will create a different session ID. Clear, guys? Right now,
Even
what
if
I'm
you
going.
open in a new, so even if
Sorry.
you open in a new, even if we open in a new tab also, it will be a same like session ID, right?
Okay,
For
so
the same.
let's see this. So I'm copying this content. I'm opening a new tab. But don't use that incognito. Incognito means it will create a new session, right? I'm using this one. I'm opening the browser developer tool, right? I'm making the request again. I'm copying the local host. I'm copying the URL, right? Copy, CMD, copy paste this thing here. This is the cookie and copying this one. Now I'm coming to this place. It is same or it is different?
Same.
Same. That means what? Now, if your browser vary, then the session ID is going to be vary. But within the same browser, if you open different window, right, different tab, then the ID is not going to be vary.
Okay. Yes.
Clear, guys? After 10 seconds, right? After 10 seconds, if you visit, then that is going to be deleted, right? So after 10 seconds, if you visit, then this is going to be deleted. Right? So let's wait for 10 seconds. I think we have already 10 seconds. Now click on the privacy page. You can see the data is not there. Even though if you pass the data, right, even though if you check the request header, right, it is sending the cookie information, but that cookie timeout, what we set in our application, that exists, right? Once exists, then it is going to show the data like this. But now you might have one question, sir, once the data is not there, once the cookie is expired, can we navigate the request to the home page again so that the user can log in and can generate the cookie again? Yes, that is possible. How we can do that? We have already discussed. We have one action method. What is the action method name, guys? Return redirect to,
action and control.
right? So you can use redirect to, or what I can say, redirect to action, return redirect to action. So for example, from this view, if we are checking that if the user ID, right, if it is null, then we need to redirect to the user to the if this value equals to null, right? Then what we need to do? We need to return redirect to action, return redirect to action, and we need to redirect to the index action view. And if it is not null, then we can display the data, right? So with these changes, now run the application, right? We are getting the data. Okay, let me go to the privacy page, right? We are not getting the data, but it is not redirecting. Why? In that case, we are using session ID. So default value of ID is 0. So in that case, it is not doing that. Session.
It's a get string need to use.
Yes. Right. So in that case, so with this change, now run the application. Because for integer, the default value is 0, right? If it is not getting, right, now go to the privacy page, right? And in this case, debug this one. See, it is returning the view as expected, right? Why we are not getting the data? We have not changed this one. So what do we need to do? We just need to copy paste these things. So it is using cookies. We need to use session, right? Now go and again access the same thing. Right, 10 seconds is done. Now what it will do, it is redirecting to the user to the index view. Right, from the index view, it is setting the data. Now if you visit the privacy page within 10 seconds, then what will happen? It will check the session ID. Yes, session ID is not null, and it is displaying the data. Right, the data is displayed. Right, clear, guys? How session exactly working?
Yes, clear.
Anybody having any question? Because see, these things, I can simply say that yes, SNID is created like this, and you can store the data and you can retrieve the data. But what exactly happening behind the scene, that is important. And for that purpose, you are here, right? And if you take the session example, you will find thousands of example on the internet, right? But you will not understand how exactly internally it is working, how the browser is storing the data, how the server is creating the data, using which key the server is sending to the data to the client in which header, right? Then the server uses the data from the right, and how the client is sending the same data using the request header, right? All these things you need to know, and to understand this thing, behind the scene story is always important. Content everybody can show you, right? If you look at YouTube videos, or if you check what I can say, uh, articles, right? Thousands of articles are there. They are explaining this concept, but you need to understand what exactly happening behind this. Clear, guys? Any question from anyone related to sessions?
Sir, can you repeat the same thing once again? I joined little bit late.
So you can watch the recorded session.
Okay.
Right? You can watch the recorded session. Session is available. If you join a little later, right, then I cannot repeat the same thing again and again, right? Why? If I repeat the same thing, then it is a waste of time for other people's. And whatever I am targeting, I cannot complete the things in the time. So recorded session are provided. You can go and check.
Can you show the code once again, please? The code.
So, okay, yeah. So when you join,
Sorry,
when you join, before how many minutes?
2 minutes back.
Then don't join the session, please. What I can say, you will not understand anything. Please watch the session from the already we have 1 hour and 18 minutes, and after 1 hour 15 minutes, if you join the session, then I will give you guarantee that you will not understand the concept. Right? Please watch the session from the beginning only, then you will understand the concept. Clear, guys?
Sir, I have one doubt.
Yes.
So, some of the application, there will be a pop-up will come, and it is asking that can we
Allow
continue
cookie.
the session, or can we log out the session? There is a pop-up will come, right?
Yeah. So based on that session timeout, right? You just need to use this one. No? So for that purpose, you need to use cookies, not session. Session means automatically it is going to be deleted. For that purpose, you need to use cookies, and there is option to delete the cookies. But here we do not have such option that from there you can delete the session.
Okay.
Right. So cookies and session both are used for the same purpose, right? And that whatever you are saying, they are using the cookies mechanism. Remember me functionality. Do you want to remember the browser to remember your password? Right? So, but they are implementing that using cookies only. And this is session means once your browser session is done, it is automatically, right? Most of the banking sites, they are using the session mechanism, and they are setting that session timeout is 5 minutes. If you are ideal for 5 minutes, then automatically your session is going to be ended, right? And for what you are saying that pop-up will come, right? For that purpose, you can make use of cookies. Clear, guys? How to redirect from one action method to another action method? How you can check whether its value is null or empty, right? How you can get the data from a action method? How you can get the data from a view, right? What are the things required to configure the sessions in your applications? Right? Why we need this add distributed memory? What is the use of this add session service? Right? Why we need to put this inside before the what I can say MVC middleware component? Clear, guys? All these things.
Yes.
Yes. And one more thing. In this case, whatever the session ID it is sending, it is in plain text or it is in encrypted format.
Encrypted.
Okay. Right. So now let us understand the difference, because if you know cookies and sessions both are used for the same purpose, then we should know when to use what is the difference between them, right? If someone asks you in the interview, okay, tell me what is the difference between cookies and sessions, when to use cookies, when to use sessions, right? Then we should know the difference between them, right? So let us first understand, this storage location, cookies. Where the cookies are stored, you guys only answer me. Where the cookie is going to be stored? In the server side or in the client side?
Inside.
Client side.
Client side.
Client side means user browser. And in the case of the sessions, What is the storage location?
Server side.
Server
No.
server cache.
Right. Right. Size limitation. What is the maximum size that you can store using cookies? 4 KB.
4 KB.
4 KB.
And here the size is more bigger than this, right? You can consider, right? So I'm
128
putting
KB.
the 128 KB, right? But it's vary from browser to browser. Some browser takes 128 KB, some browser takes less than 128 KB, right? But it is more than 4 KB. Google Chrome taking 128 KB. So what I'm specifying here, it is basically for the Google Chrome, but it's vary from browser to browser. You can't say that 128 KB for each and every browser. Clear? Clear or not?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, sir.
So using cookies lifetime means you can set when the cookie is going to be expired, right? So this is the reason why if you see cookies, right? So whenever we are returning the data, we are also setting the expire time when that cookie is going to be expired, right? If you visit, right? Right. So if you visit, then you will see that expired date time is also mentioned in the cookie, right? So based on this date time, the cookie is going to be deleted. And on the other hand, whatever the timeout you set, right? If you ideal for that time period, and even whenever you close the browser, the session is going to be deleted automatically. Clear? So using cookies, you can set the expiration date, and after which the browser will automatically delete the cookies. Even we are having the delete functionality, but we can set the expiration date, and after the expiration date, the cookie is going to be deleted automatically by the browser. And in the case of session, we need to configure the session timeout. And after that timeout, if the session become ideal for that time period, right, then the session is going to be deleted automatically. Even when we close the browser, the session is going to be deleted automatically. Clear, guys? Clear or not? When the session is going to be deleted,
Yes.
when the key is going to be deleted, is that clear?
Yes.
Right. So security means in the case of cookies, there is no security. Why? Because the data is stored on the client machine, and that is true in plain text. So cross-site scripting, right, data tampering, all these things can happen if you are storing the data on the cookies. Why? Because suppose you go to some, if you open one website using someone's machine, and you, even though, right, you forgot to, what I can say, click the logout button or something, and you just to close the browser. Then when the next person will come, and he can also see and verify your data, and the data is in plain text, right? So it is vulnerable to tampering and cross-site scripting attack. And coming to session data is stored on the server, making it less vulnerable to client-side attacks, right? So because the data is not stored on the client side, so it is very less chance that someone makes some kind of attacks using sessions. But using cookies, it is possible. Why? Because the data is stored on the client side. That is true in plain text. Clear? Clear or not, guys?
Yes.
Clear. Clear.
Right? And in the case of a data transfer, in the case of cookies, right? Suppose I created 100 keys and values, 100 cookies. Then all those 100 cookies will be sent by the client to the server or not?
Yes.
Yes. Means if you look at this, right, this is the set cookie. Here I'm created two cookies. So here the server sending two cookies, and whenever the client sending, that two cookies also included in here also, user ID, username. Similarly, if we are creating 100 cookies, then in the response header, there are 100 set cookie statement. And all those 100 header cookies data that is in the key value pair, that is also going to be sent by the client to the server, right? That means if more data is there, That means the data transfer means size is going to be increased. Size is increased means network traffic is also going to be increased. So on the other hand, in the case of sessions, what is sent? Only the session ID. So this is the session ID which is going to be sent. That means less data transfer using session. If you are transferring less data, that means the network bandwidth is going to be less. Network bandwidth less means what? The data will be transferred at a faster speed as compared to cookies. Because if you are having, simple example, one file size is, if you are downloading one movie size is 500 MB, another movie size is 2.5 GB. Which one will take less time to download? Obviously, those movie which is having 500 MB. Similarly, if you are sending more data in the network, then that will take more time to travel from client to the server. If you are sending less data in the request, right, then it will take less time to travel from client to the server. So this is the reason why if you are storing more data, right, then it is better to use what I can say sessions, because in that case you will get better performance. Clear, guys?
Yes, clear.
Right? You can use this cookie and sessions both for user authentication, user preferences, tracking user interaction, providing personal experience, right? All these things for this purpose you can use. So consideration. So whenever which want to choose, that basically depends where you want to store the data. You want to store the data on the client machine or in the server. If you're storing in the data in the server, then the server size is going to be increased, right? If you are storing the data in the client side, the server side is not going to be increased. So whichever option you want, as per your requirement, you need to choose data size, right? You want to store more data or less data. If you want to store more data, then you need to use what option? Let's tell me. If you need to store more data, then
Session. Session.
use
Sure.
because cookies have some limitation. Network traffic, right? If you want to, if network traffic is an issue, right, then which will give you better network traffic, right, which will take more time and which will take less time whenever transferring the data. Obviously session will take less time, because in the case of session only one session ID is going to be transferred. Security means which one is give you better security?
Again, session.
Sorry, session, right? Because in the case of session, the data is stored on the server side, as well as what I can say, the data or whatever the session ID we are sending to the client, that is in encrypted format, right? So from this what we understand, if we don't want to make your application to store the data, right? If you don't want to store the data in the server side, then you need to use what option? Cookies. If storage is not an issue, right, but if you want to store more data, if you want to transfer the data in less time, if you want to provide security, then in this case you need to prefer to use what option? Sessions. Clear?
Yes, clear.
Right? So what are the real-time applications, right? What are the real-time use case scenarios where you use the sessions and cookies, right? Basically, right, if you are implementing some kind of application where authentication authorization is available, where user preferences is available. Preferences means user will decide what themes he need to use, what language he need to use, right? If the user will decide all these things and accordingly you need to provide the user experience, then in that case you can make use of sessions and cookies, right? If you are developing one e-commerce application where you need to provide the shopping cart functionality, right? Even though you can make use for data persistence. Data persistence means, suppose, right, if you remember, it is also possible that we can develop a one application, a multi-step application. In step one, we take the basic information. In step two, we take the education information. In step three, we take the what I can say experience information, right? And finally, we need to store the data into the database. So in that case, whatever the data the user is providing in each step, that you can store in the session and the cookies, so that the same data you can use in the next request. That means for multi-page data processing, right, you can make use of these sessions and what I can say cookies. User activity tracking means what? Now, if you guys see, if you are visiting one website, right, and they are asking please accept the cookies, and if you accept, they are getting access to your personalized behavior, right? What it means? What it means? Whatever you are searching mostly in the browser, right? Accordingly, they are going to show you ad whenever you visit any website. That means they are tracking user activity. Temporary data, definitely, if you want to store temporary data and some alert message notification messages, right, for a shorter period of time or for a longer period of time, then you can make use of these sessions and cookies. User specific data, what is the user ID, user name, and those you can also store in the session and cookies. Cross request communication means what? Now sessions, right, what exactly it means? It allows you to share the data between different requests, right, from the same user, right? From one page I'm requesting some data, from another page I'm requesting some data, right? For each request I'm not going to send my what I can say, the username and password. That means that session and cookies, this concept can make use of cross request communication. Caching you can also implement using sessions and cookies. Single sign on, right, this is also possible using the session and cookies. Even those some of the game application, right, they are developed using sessions, right? And again, the same concept, right, that is also applicable to cookies, right? You can say authentication, user preferences, this remember me functionality. This is not available with what I can say sessions, right? If you want to use this remember me functionality, then you need to use cookies. Shopping cart session, right? Shopping carts is one of the things that you need to reuse. Here you should not use shopping cart, because in this case, once the session is deleted, right? Once the session is deleted, the data is going to be deleted. But here you can store the data, right? And all these things clear. When to use sessions and when to use cookies. Visitor counting, you can create a global variable whenever a new visitor comes from a different browser. You just need to increase the count, and for that purpose you can make use of cookies, persistent cookies. Clear, guys? Any question from anyone related to today's session?
No, sir.
One question.
Right.
Is
From
it
tomorrow we are
possible?
going to start. From tomorrow we are going to start routing concept, right? Yes. Any question?
Is it possible to see the session values?
Sorry, session values.
Yes.
This
How
is
is
this,
sorry?
this is the session value.
No, this is a session ID, right? Or
Yes. This is the session ID, and you can see that. So whatever you are using here, this is nothing but session ID username, and this is your value, and this is stored in the this name and value. It is stored in the cache in the memory. So if you are storing something in the memory, right? Can you show me that from your memory?
no?
So the same concept is here. It is not a file, right? It is generated at runtime. At runtime, it is storing in the memory, and from there it is fetching the data, and this key it is going to store the data in the form of a key value pair. This will become the key and this will become the value.
Okay. So view bag, view data, temp data will be stored in the cache memory, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
The lifetime is only for one request,
Yes. Well,
right?
yes.
Once the request completed, the data is ended. But the
Value
data, but using temp data, you can extend the lifetime one by one step by step, right? From one request to another request, if you want to extend the right lifetime of the temp data, then you can make use of right that keep method, and by passing that key name, or if you want to keep all the data for the next request, then you can make use of that simply keep method, right?
Yes. So one more doubt I have. Is session variables and session is both the same or the
Sorry.
session variables we are using, right?
So this is nothing but your session variable, no?
Okay.
The session key, session variable, nothing but it is going to be the session key. And this is key. In this case, this is key, and this is its corresponding value. And in this case, right, if you look at the browser, right, so we are not passing that key and value. We are the server generating something called session ID, right? That session ID, it is going to return to the client. And based on this session ID, it identify who is the browser, and based on this session ID, it can identify what are the key values stored in the memory, and then it will fetch the data. But for that purpose, the session should be in active state. If the session is what I can say deleted, then you will see, you will not find this information from your server. Session is not deleted, session is expired,
Okay.
right? Clear, guys?
Yes.
Okay. And Sam, are you there?
Yes, sir.
So what is your question? What is the difference between temp data, sorry, pick method and keep method? You didn't attend that session?
I missed that also, joined little late on that day.
So if you see, if you miss the session, then please go through the recorded session. I have explained that temp data concept very in detailed manner, right? What happening behind the scene, what happening, right? Even I have provided the documentation, what is happening, when to use a keep method, right? How you can make use of a keep method to store a specific key, to store all the keys, right? So everything we have discussed in detail. So please watch the recorded session before making any question. And another thing, how we can pass the data from views to controller action method, we have not yet discussed those things. Then why you are thinking about what we supposed to be discuss in our upcoming sessions?
No, this thing in ASP.NET MVC, we have to pass the data from request object or some. So like that,
What
I
I'm
thinking.
talking, we have not yet discussed those things. Why you are asking question which topics we have not discussed? That is my question. In our upcoming sessions, right, once we discuss what are HTML tag helpers, how you can create a text box, drop down list, checkbox, right? Then whenever you click on the submit button, those data, how I can capture in my action method, those things we are going to discuss in our coming sessions, right? Model binder is there, model validation is there, HTML tag helper is there. We are going to store the data into the database using in Dapper, using Entity Framework Core, using ADO.NET, right? Everything is there in the pipeline. My question is why you are thinking such things from the day one, and why you are asking question about those topics. That is what my question.
No, I thought temp view session and other concept has been discussed already. How to pass the data from controller to view.
See, I have provided the detailed course syllabus, and I'm following the syllabus, right? And even though some of the concept which are not in the syllabus, that also I'm going to cover. The session and the cookies concept initially not in the course syllabus. If you look at the course syllabus, these concepts are not there. Even I thought, right? Yes, this is required. I'm adding those concepts, right? So if but,
Right.
but if I mention something in the course syllabus, 100% that concept I'm going to explain. Don't ask that question, right? Don't right, which we supposed to be discussed in our coming sessions. And again,
Okay.
one more thing, first go through the recorded session, then ask the question if you are having any doubt. And don't me ask the question like this. If you join at 8:15 and if you are asking at 18, sir, can you please repeat? Can you please show me the code? Don't I can't do, sorry, that is not possible. You understood what I meant to tell?
Yes.
I'm providing you the documentation. I'm providing you the recorded sessions to each and everyone. If you miss, and why I'm providing? Because sometimes internet issue, some personal problem, right? Some family problem, office work, electric problem. This is the reason why I'm uploading the recorded session for each and everyone. If you miss the session, right, then you can go through the session first, and then if you are still having some question, then you can ask the question. But without going through the session, right? Don't ask me any question. Yes. Anybody having any more questions?
Yes, sir. I have two questions. First question is, you have explained during the session creations, there is a line called HTTP only for HTTP.
Yes.
That time you
Okay,
have
that is
explained that.
what, see, if you try to access this application from a, what I can say, from the JavaScript, right? So, going further, also, I'm going to explain how you can access the action method from using JavaScript and jQuery. That is also possible, right? So,
Okay,
in
you
that
are you
case,
going to
it,
explain that, right?
yes,
So okay,
yes,
that is
definitely, definitely. How to use
okay.
JavaScript, right, to perform the operations, right? How you can access the action method from your JavaScript and jQuery, right? So at that case
Okay,
time, it is not going to take these sessions.
okay. Actually, I am not aware about how to access through JavaScript, so maybe you will
So,
explain later. So okay,
if you have any experience of ASP.NET MVC,
little bits are not much.
right? So from
That's
MVC, using jQuery Ajax, right? We can
mm,
also call the action method.
okay,
Right? Suppose in that
okay.
case, what will happen? Suppose you are having one complete page, right?
Mm,
And you
mm,
want to update some of the data, right, from a part
mm,
of a page. So in that case,
mm,
why I should load the page completely? Instead, I can
mm,
make an asynchronous call, right? JavaScript call,
mm,
and that
mm,
JavaScript is going to return me some data, and I'm going to
mm.
update that only particular part of the page, right? Which will
Okay,
give you good user experience, right? Good
mm,
performance,
okay. Yeah, thank you, sir.
right?
Second question is, like it is kind of a scenario based one. First one, first time opening a Google Chrome, I'm using a session methodology. Second one is like I'm using Edge. But the same user. Okay,
Hmm.
they are going to store the same user data, but
Hmm.
if they are modifying some of the user data, will it reflect in the both the browser, or it will how it will be
Basically, if you modify the data, so data is
Hmm.
going to be modified where? In the database,
In the server, actually server cache.
server cache. If you are modifying the data, definitely, right, the data is going to be updated. But don't think that. See, in this case,
Hmm.
suppose I'm creating this key, right, and if
Yes.
this data is there, if you are
Hmm.
creating, if you are modifying the same data from a different, what I can say,
Browser.
from browser, then it will not reflect. But in that case, the data, right, the data, if you are
Hmm.
modifying, if it is modified in the database, and if
Hmm.
you are fetching the data from the database, then it is going to be reflected. And those data, right, those data which are going to be
Hmm.
modified, right, we
Hmm.
are not going to
Hmm.
store, we are not supposed to store such data in the session or cache.
Okay. Okay. So the ideal method is we have to store it in the database.
Obviously. So why you should,
Oh,
right? For
okay.
temporary storage purpose, we are using session and cookies. For permanent
Okay.
storage purpose, we are having database.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
And those data which are going to be updated, right, on each request or in some of the request, then we should not store them, right? Suppose, for example, user ID and password. This data
Hmm.
is not going to be updated in every day. So we can
Okay.
store them in the session.
Okay. So during the differentiate, you have explained cookies can have access to the user uh, activities. Can
Mm,
you
mm.
tell me that how the user
Yes,
activities
yes.
are tracked?
Yes,
Tracked.
yes, yes. See, basically, whenever you are doing some kind of, what I can say, in your application, right? Whenever you
Mm, mm,
visited website, if the
yes.
website showing some ads, right?
Mm,
Then those ads is going to be, right? For
mm,
example, if I'm visiting this, right, website .NET tutorials,
okay.
right?
Mm,
So in this .NET tutorials website, this is incognito mode. Okay. So I'm opening incognito mode. I'm opening this website. So in this website,
okay.
it is showing some
Mm,
ad.
yes.
Why it is showing this ad, not that word, right? Or why it is showing this kind of ad to me? But if you open, it will show you a different ad to you. Why? Because of the cookies. Cookies track what all things you are doing in your browser, what you are mostly search in the browser, what kind of things you are, what kind of activity you are doing in your browser. Those information it will capture, and accordingly it will give you the experience, right? So some
Yes,
of
sir.
the websites, right?
Overview
Sorry.
is clear, but how exactly it is taking the user information? Overview is clear, sir, but how it is taking the user information exactly through the cookies? That is not clear for me, because
See,
cookie is like a key value pair and stored in the in a text format. How it is taking our user information? My voice is audible.
yes, yes. So you
Okay.
basically means to know how it is internally working.
Yeah. Yes.
See, basically what it is internally working means, if we
Mm,
suppose my website is there, and
mm,
in that website there is an option
mm,
allow cookies, right?
mm,
When I click on
mm,
the allow cookies option, right, then the
mm,
whatever I'm doing inside in that particular website, all this
mm.
information are going to be captured by the browser,
Yes.
right? And
Mm,
another website, they want to know
mm,
what other
mm,
kind of activities this user
mm.
does in that in their browser. And how you will get
Yes.
the information if you click on that accept cookies. So have you ever got that accept cookies button in any website?
Mm. Yes.
Yes
Yes.
or no?
Yes.
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 So whenever you click on that accept cookies button, then that
Mm,
all the information, right, whatever you are doing, right, whatever
mm,
information you are providing in that website, everything will
mm,
be captured by the browser, and that
mm.
information can be used by other websites,
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
right?
Clear, sir. Clear. Yes. Thank you. That's it.
Guys, any more question from anyone?
Can we store other type of data except string or integer in session?
Yeah, you can store anything.
Okay, Boolean, double, anything. Okay.
Anything. But that needs to be converted into string, and then you need to store that. Suppose you want to store a string Boolean data. You can create a Boolean variable, but you can store that Boolean value variable as a string value. And whenever you retrieve, you first retrieve a string and then convert that to Boolean type. Clear?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So for example, if you do something like this, suppose I'm creating one variable session is active user. Suppose I'm creating one variable is active, right? Is active user, and I'm giving that name like this, right? And what I'm trying to do, I'm creating a variable, right? So in this case, I'm using this is active user, and here I'm storing that value true, right? I'm valuing that value true here. And now I want to retrieve that value. Boolean is active, right? But in this case, it will return the data in the form of a what? String.
String.
So what do we need to
String.
do? We need to convert that value to, right? You need to convert
We
that
need
value
to
to Boolean.
explicitly
Yes,
convert.
yes. Because you can store, as I already showed you, they are having only integer and string method, no other method, right? So now you can get the
Okay.
data like this. Clear?
Yes.
Any more question from anyone else? Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.